Right, so in this stage here, we're going to start laying out the lines for our foundation strips. So you should have 5 of these strips here. These are 24 inches long by 1 inches wide, okay? And they're 3/4 of an inch thick. So we're going to start laying these out on our floor plan. Just before we do that, let's take a look at what we've got. So you can see here, by all these lines, this is my floor plan for my model house here. Squared it all up and made it as close as I could to my measurements that I had through my room or floor plan, and I laid it out onto my plywood nice and square, okay? Just like we did when we started out. Remember, I started out with this wall here. That's the wall I'm going to start with. I don't advise you to start with a complicated area. Start with somewhere that's much more easier to work with. So to do this, you're going to grab one of your foundation strips that you have. You want to hold it upright so that 3/4 of an inch section is up. Okay? And then I'm going to hold this against my line. I'm going to keep this edge here on the line that I have over here, okay? And what we're going to do here, we're just going to trace this out. So I'm going to line this up, it's nicely on my line over here. I'm going to hold it down, and I'm going to use my pencil here. Again, nice, good, sharp pencil when you're doing this. Okay, going to do that until I've got a nice, solid line going across. And that's my first foundation piece that I would install there, okay? This foundation piece would go from this wall here to this wall over here. Now there's a theme when we do this, okay? You'll see it as we go along. So that's our first piece that would go in. So if I was using this and I was going to cut it, easiest way to do it, I would line this up on one edge. I'd go to my other end with my pencil, and I'd just mark the length of it like here. This is the nice thing about this stage, is there's very little measuring that you have to do. You can measure it by all means, but if you just want to line it up and mark it with a pencil and then get your saw and cut it, that works as well. Okay. So there's my first one laid out. Now I'm going to start doing my next one. I'm going to work my way around this way. Now the next one here, by all means you could just line this one up and continue connecting them all as you go. But I like to sandwich these pieces together, and you'll see what I mean when I do that in a second. So instead of doing this wall here, instead of doing what we just did down here, over here, I'm actually going to go and do this wall at the top up here, okay? And to do this, I'm just going to rotate my base around, make it more comfortable for me to work with. So again, I'm going to do this wall here. Now watch what I do. So I'm going to lay my foundation piece on that line. Okay, I'm always working on the inside of my plan, not the outside here. So I've got my foundation piece. I'm going to mark this over. Now I'm just going to go slightly past where that line is. Okay. And I'm also going to mark the underside over here. You'll see why in a second. Okay, so there you can see that line that I just drew all the way across. Now if you can see here, there's the one I did before. There's the one I've got now. Now I'm going to do this middle one. And this is where I said it was like a sandwich. These pieces are the bread, and this is the filling. Can you see how this one goes all the way through, this one goes all the way through, and now this piece is going to be on the inside. You don't have to do it this way. It's just I find it easier in my mind to do it this way, and maybe you will too. But either way is fine. You don't have to do it this way. This is just how I like to do it. Okay, and there you go. So if I was to install this piece of foundation, it would go from right where we left off before, that seam there, all the way through to where this seam is here. That would be another piece. Now as you do this, it makes good practice to number these. So that's number 1, that's number 2, this piece is going to be number 3, and so on all the way across. Let's continue doing this for the rest of our project right here, keeping this theme in mind where we sandwich pieces together, okay? So let's work on this little complicated section over here. Now there's a few ways we could go about doing this. I'm going to do the sandwich theme over here. So I'm going to do this little wall section on this side. I'm just going to draw my pencil line here and on the other side. Okay. Now you see how I've left these a little bit longer? We're going to get to that in a second. You'll see what I'll do with that in a second. Okay. So there's that little piece there. I'm then going to do this big wall here. Then I'll sandwich these little pieces in between for there and there. Okay. So I'm going to do this front wall here. Get nice, good, sharp pencil lines when you're doing this. Okay. So this wall here would go from section to section, like that. You can see out on the camera there, section to section. This wall here would go from here over, and I'll get to where that stops in a minute. This wall here would go from here all the way over to, I'll tell you where that goes in a second. Okay. Right, to figure out these little pieces here, I'm going to put my foundation ruler on the lines. See if you can see it better on this side. I'm going to put it on this pencil line here. Okay, and I'm going to mark the back side of this, and you'll see what happens here when I do this. Okay, so I've just connected a line all the way through to where that top one is. Just ignore this, this is just an overflow line. But by doing this, you create a nice good sharp corner point. You also don't have to measure this because it automatically measures itself when we do it this way. So by doing that, we can see this one goes from here all the way over to this line here. This is a tiny little block, and this is just going to be a tiny little filler block right there, from there to there. See how it's sandwiched from this piece to this piece? It's always sandwiched in. Again, that's how I like to do it. You don't have to do it this way, whatever you're more comfortable with. This one again, I'm going to bring it right the way to the top here. Again, this one is the little filler piece. And if I did my measurements right, these two pieces should be the same length, really, shouldn't they? And this piece here goes from the end to where this line is right here. Okay. Now there's one more piece, which is this left-hand one. Let's get this one laid out. So again, I'm just using my foundation piece. Nice, good, sharp pencil lines when I do this. Okay, there's that last one. And this one would go from where this seam is here all the way through to where the seam is right over here. Okay, and that is it, guys. That is our foundation layout complete. So they spin this back to how we had it originally. So there's our starting point that we did. We did number 1, number 2, number 3. This piece would be number 4, 5, and this one's 6. This piece is number 7, and lastly this one is number 8. Now I have 8 pieces on mine. You might have more, you might have less, depends on the type of plan that you put together. Okay, and that's the basic layout for doing this. Now if you have a project with 45-degree angles, or maybe you have a bay window with a couple of angles on it, that does get a little bit more challenging, and I'll put together a little short video on how to accomplish that one later. But this is just the starting point right here, how to lay out your foundations. After this stage, we're on to the installation part. We're going to start cutting pieces and installing them onto our sections that we just marked out here, okay? Take care, guys, and I'll see you next time.